You can't just walk in here looking like that and ask for $500,000. Who do you think you are? Beyoncé? Emily Reynolds didn't whisper it. She laughed, loud. Her voice sliced through the crowded lobby of Pinnacle Bank like a box cutter across skin. It was meant to humiliate. Her hands still resting on the counter. She stared Sophia Carter down, head tilted, eyes narrowed, not as a manager doing her job, but like a gatekeeper trying to chase an intruder out of sacred ground. Security's on speed dial. Sweetheart, you can either leave now or wait to be escorted out in cuffs. That was how it started. Not with suspicion, not even with subtle racism, but with open contempt. She said it in front of customers, in front of staff, in front of Sophia's reflection in the window, flickering under a cheap LED light that couldn't decide whether to stay on or die out completely. And in that moment, Sophia Carter, a 42-year-old black CEO who owned 35% of the very bank they were standing in, didn't say a word. She just breathed, deep, controlled, and underneath that breath, something old and ugly stirred. Not fear, not shock, something older than both, recognition. Before we dive in, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. Because this isn't just about one bank. It's about what happens when a woman builds everything, walks into her own institution, and gets treated like a criminal. This is about racism, power, and what happens when someone refuses to shrink. Sophia Carter entered the Pinnacle Bank branch on South Tryon Street, dressed in a navy blazer, white blouse, and jeans. Simple, intentional. She carried no briefcase, no entourage. No one would have guessed she had over 200 employees under her name, or that Forbes had named her one of the 10 most influential women in finance the year prior. She looked like someone running errands. That's exactly what she wanted. Her goal wasn't to be recognized, it was to watch. Quietly. She'd been reading threads on Reddit for weeks, anonymous posts by former tellers, frustrated interns, even a few customers, all pointing to one thing: racism. Not loud, dramatic scenes, but patterns. A black man held longer for check verification than a white man before him. A Latina woman being asked for extra ID while a white couple cashed out with smiles. Comments about those people. Managers laughing it off. The pattern was ugly, familiar, and personal. She chose this branch on purpose. Tuesday morning, mid-June. The bank was buzzing, partly because of the annual Tech Expo across the street that brought an unusual spike in foot traffic. Clients in suits stood beside line cooks on their break. The AC was fighting a losing battle against the North Carolina heat. One of the lobby's LED lights kept flickering. Sophia took it all in as she stepped forward, the moment she approached the counter. Emily Reynolds spotted her and gave that type of smile that's meant to be polite, but misses the eyes completely. "Can I help you?" she asked, already glancing at the Pierces waiting nearby. A white couple, polished and wealthy-looking. Sophia nodded, calm. "I'd like to make a withdrawal. $500,000. Everything froze. Emily blinked. Then she laughed, full-throated, unbothered. $500,000? What, in cash?" Sophia nodded again. "Yes. I called ahead last week. There should be a note in the system." Emily didn't even check. "Right. And I'm married to Denzel Washington," she scoffed, then leaned to one side like she was about to whisper but didn't lower her voice. "Look, I don't know who told you could waltz in here looking like you just left a Walmart clearance rack and ask for that kind of money. But this is a real bank, not a charity. You can either step aside or—" Layla Walsh, the teller next to her, chimed in before Sophia could respond. "She's not in the system," she said, glancing at her screen. "Probably fake info, or she gave us someone else's account number." Sophia's mouth didn't even move. She simply unlocked her phone and started recording. Across the room, David Pierce, A black man in a gray tailored suit, who happened to be Rachel Pierce's husband, was watching closely now. He didn't say anything yet, but his eyes tracked Emily's every move. Rachel, white, 42, designer scarf, heels too high for this heat, was already stepping closer. "Excuse me, Emily?" she said, handing over her driver's license with a $400 tip folded behind it. "If you can prioritize us, we're in a bit of a rush. Lunch at the Ritz. You understand?" Emily didn't hesitate. "Of course. Rachel, come on up. Let's take care of you." The shift was instant. She waved over Layla. "Clear their check. Full deposit. Add their bottle of water. Please." Then she turned back to Sophia. Eyes narrowed again. "You're still here?" The smirk said everything. Sophia could feel it. The familiar twist in her stomach. It wasn't new. When she was 18, her local bank had refused to open an account for her, claiming her social security number had been flagged. It hadn't. They just didn't want to take the risk on a black girl who worked part-time and lived in the wrong zip code. That day stayed with her. It followed her through college, through her first job offer, through every boardroom where she had to work twice as hard to prove half as much. And now, here she was again, 42 years old, Forbes listed, a CEO, and still. A teller with less than 2 minutes of interaction had decided she wasn't just unworthy, she was dangerous. Andrew Foster, a local journalist who'd been filming B-roll for a community banking piece, started recording from the side. "Excuse me?" he asked gently. "Is there a reason she's being refused service?" Emily looked over, annoyed. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." "It does." David Pierce finally spoke. "She said she called ahead. You didn't check anything. And if you really think a scammer's walking in here asking for 500 grand in broad daylight with a bank full of cameras, you're not just profiling, you're lazy." Emily's smile disappeared. Across the room, phones started coming out. Layla hissed something to Violet Monroe, another teller, who nodded and whispered, "She's got scammer vibes. Look at those jeans." Sophia heard that. Clear as day. She kept recording, her face calm, but inside. Her pulse was a storm. Her memory flashed to age 25, when a teller once asked if she was lost after she walked into a downtown branch with a black friend to co-sign a loan. They had been escorted out before they could even sit down. She turned slowly toward Andrew and nodded. "Keep filming." Andrew's live stream had already picked up viewers. One of them, a finance blogger with a 2 million person following, was screen recording, ready to repost. This wasn't just another day at the bank. This was turning into something much bigger. Emily didn't know who Sophia was, yet, but she would. Soon. Sophia shifted her stance, calm but unmovable. The heat, the flickering lights, the stares. None of it could touch her anymore. What they didn't know was that every insult hurled in that lobby wasn't weakening her. It was waking something up. The part of her that had stayed quiet, strategic, respectable. The part that once believed success would protect her. That day, that part died, and something far more powerful stepped forward. She looked Emily straight in the eye, and she smiled. It was not the kind of smile that begged for approval. It was the kind of smile that warned, that dared, that said, "I know exactly who I am. Do you?" Emily blinked. Just once. Then, sensing the shift in atmosphere, but refusing to yield, she leaned closer to Layla and said under her breath, though loud enough for anyone within 5 feet to hear, "She's still filming? For what? She think this is going to get her famous?" Layla chuckled, then pretended to be busy typing something, her fingers hovering over a screen that hadn't moved in minutes. "She's not even on file. Must be some kind of burner account," she said. louder this time, as if inviting witnesses to hear her logic. Violet, catching the rhythm of the mockery, crossed her arms and added, "If she really had money, she wouldn't be dressed like that. She looks like she borrowed that blazer from a thrift bin." Sophia didn't react. Her phone was still recording, camera steady, capturing every face, every word, every flicker of malice wearing a name tag. But the expression on her face had shifted, not to anger, but to calculation. And across the room, Andrew Foster saw it. The journalist's eyes narrowed with intent. He raised his own phone, adjusted the angle, and kept filming. Something told him this wasn't going to be a routine afternoon. Sophia's calm was too complete, her silence too dangerous. Emily suddenly snapped upright, speaking louder now. "I think we've got a fraud situation here. I'm calling it in." She reached for the landline and dialed 3 digits. "Yes. Charlotte PD? I need officers dispatched immediately to Pinnacle Bank. South Tryon branch. Possible identity theft and attempted theft in progress. Female suspect. Black. Mid-40s. Wearing jeans. Claims to be withdrawing $500,000 in cash. Account not found in system. Refusing to leave." The air shifted again. Harder this time. Clients turned fully now, some with confusion, others with concern, and some, especially the black and brown ones, with a heavy, familiar dread. The word suspect landed like a slap across the room. Sophia didn't blink. She knew what came next. At 30, she'd watched a guard at a downtown bank follow her through the lobby simply because she dared to wear braids. At 35, she'd been denied a business loan after being told, with a straight face, that her numbers looked good, but her industry was too ambitious for someone like her. Every decade, another wound, every insult, another layer of armor. So when Emily leaned across the counter and said, "You can wait for the officers outside or they'll remove you themselves," Sophia merely raised her phone and said clearly, "You're being recorded, and you're making a mistake you'll regret." Just then, David Pierce stood, quietly at first, but with a deliberate steadiness that drew attention. "That's enough," he said. Rachel looked up from her water, visibly annoyed. "David, please, don't get involved." But David didn't look at her. His eyes were on Emily. "Did you even check her ID? Did you even look up the account number she gave you?" Emily stiffened. "This doesn't concern you, sir." David's voice remained calm, but steel threaded through it now. "When a white client hands you a license and slips you a tip, you skip the entire protocol and call them VIP. When a black woman asks to withdraw her own funds, you call the police. That concerns me." Across the room, murmurs started. A few clients pulled out their phones. Andrew panned slowly across the lobby. Layla looked pale now. Her fingers trembled against the keyboard. "It's the system," she muttered, almost to herself. "It glitched." Sophia tilted her head slightly. "Then fix it. You've had 10 minutes. Violet scoffed again. "Maybe if you weren't recording everything like some social justice warrior. We could have figured this out." Andrew caught that too. And the stream kept climbing. Suddenly, Layla leaned in and whispered something to Emily. Sophia caught the last 2 words. "Skip training." That made her pause. Layla had skipped the mandatory diversity and bias training Pinnacle implemented last fall. Emily had excused it. Union conflict. Scheduling issues. Sophia knew all of that already. She had signed off on the training initiative herself. So, to stand here now, as a black CEO, being profiled and ignored by employees who were never made to understand why that training mattered. It wasn't just offensive, it was betrayal. Layla glanced around nervously. "I didn't mean to say that out loud," she muttered, eyes darting to the growing number of phones recording. This is gonna blow up, Violet hissed. I didn't sign up for this PR mess. Sophia's phone buzzed again. Nora. Live streams picked up over 8,000 views in 6 minutes. Finance blogger reposted it with the caption, Black CEO profiled at her own bank. I've got media circling. Do not move. Josiah Clark's the officer assigned. Black, cautious. He'll likely hesitate. Let it play. Sophia looked up just as the glass doors opened. Josiah stepped inside. Officer uniform crisp. Posture alert but not aggressive. Emily waved him over quickly. Officer Clark, thank you. That's the woman. Right there. Tried to pull a scam. Refused to leave. Filming everything. Harassing staff. Threatening us. Josiah blinked. He looked at Sophia, then at her phone, then back at Emily. Did she show ID? She says she has an account. Emily cut in. System says otherwise. Sophia reached into her tote, pulled out a slim black wallet, and slid her ID across the counter slowly. Eyes locked on Josiah. That name should mean something to you, she said softly. Josiah read the name. His brows twitched, just slightly. Sophia Carter? The pause stretched. Then he glanced back at the screen Layla was holding up. That's a system error code, he said. I've seen it before. Usually triggered when the servers overheat. Happened last week in Midtown during the heat wave. Emily faltered. Layla looked away. Josiah turned to Sophia. Ma'am, may I ask why you're withdrawing that much cash? Because it's my account, she said simply. And I can... She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Clients had stopped pretending to do their banking. All eyes were on this moment, on this woman, on this stand. Emily crossed her arms. Frustrated but rattled, Rachel whispered something to David, who ignored her completely. Violet leaned back from the counter, as if distance might shield her from responsibility. And in the corner, Thomas, silent, watchful, stepped slightly forward, eyes on Josiah. Then Sophia. He didn't speak, but his posture spoke volumes. He believed her. And he wasn't the only one. The next move would change everything. Josiah Clark stood in the middle of the lobby, the weight of a uniform not unfamiliar to him, but the weight of this moment different. He'd been called to banks before, dozens of times, but never had he walked into one and found the supposed suspect staring back at him not with fear or panic, but stillness. Sophia Carter didn't flinch. Her ID sat on the counter, her phone still recording. She didn't raise her voice, didn't back down, didn't try to explain herself, not in the way the world often demanded black women explain their very existence. She simply stood, her presence quiet but towering, daring the truth to catch up. Josiah shifted, looking toward Emily, who was still speaking, too fast now. We have procedures. Officer, she wouldn't verify her account. She became hostile. That's a large amount of cash she's trying to walk out with. I had to act. Josiah looked at her with the faintest trace of disbelief. Did you verify the account? He asked. Emily hesitated. It's not in the system, Layla blurted, then quickly added, There's a glitch. Maybe. Josiah narrowed his eyes. Show me. Layla turned the screen, her hand trembling now. The error code blinking faintly beneath Sophia's account summary, partially loaded, partially stuck. He didn't need to squint to know what it was. He'd seen that code before, last week, during a system meltdown across half the city, when a heat wave had knocked out server cooling units and flagged dozens of legitimate accounts as suspicious. This was that same code. You flagged her for this? He asked flatly. A known system bug? Emily bristled. You're not here to audit us. You're here to remove the threat. That word again, threat. It hung in the air like static. Josiah took a slow step toward Sophia. Ma'am, I'd like to speak with you privately. If that's all right? Anything you want to ask, she said gently. Ask right here. Everyone's already watching. And indeed, they were. Phones held high. Clients frozen in place. Andrew's live stream hovering past 12,000 viewers. David Pierce stood off to the side now. Arms crossed, jaw set. Rachel huffed, clearly annoyed by the attention shifting away from her. Violet whispered something sharp to Layla. Sophia caught the words backfire and stupid tip. Layla's eyes flicked around nervously, her fingers still pretending to type. Josiah sighed. He didn't want this. Not like this. I'm not here to escalate, he said. I just want to understand. Your name is Sophia Carter? She nodded. Yes. And you're requesting a withdrawal of $500,000? That's correct. Do you have any documentation? It's all in the system. Or it should be, she said. And I called ahead last Thursday. That call should be logged. Josiah turned. You have call logs? Emily waved a hand. We're not obligated to prove phone traffic to every person who claims they spoke to us. But her voice was faltering. Andrew stepped forward, not interfering, just repositioning for a clearer shot. She called ahead. You didn't check. She gave ID. You didn't check. And now you want to call the cops. Not for any criminal behavior, but because she doesn't look like your average high roller. That's the story here. And we're live. Emily's mask cracked then. Just a little. Not a full collapse. But enough for her voice to waver. We've had a lot of fraud lately. We can't take chances. Except, David interjected. You didn't say that to the Pierces. You took their check and cleared it in 5 minutes. Silence followed. Josiah looked at Emily, then at Rachel. Is that true? Rachel raised her eyebrows. Are you asking me if I bribed her? She said, too loud. Because that's defamatory. I gave her a tip. For professionalism. A tip? Josiah asked. $400? It's my money, she snapped. And her service was prompt. To be clear, Josiah said. You gave her a cash tip before she prioritized your transaction over someone already at the counter? Emily looked cornered now. Rachel didn't influence anything. I made the judgment call. Did you log that tip? He asked. We don't log tips, Layla blurted, then instantly regretted it. Andrew caught it on camera. Josiah turned to Sophia. Ma'am, I'm not detaining you, but I would ask that you wait while I sort this out with management. I'm not moving, she said, because the moment I do, this all gets spun. Josiah nodded slowly. I understand. And then came the final blow. A ping from Andrew's phone. He looked down, then up, eyes wide. I just received a file from an anonymous source, a former employee. It's a chat log, internal, between Emily, Layla, and Violet. From earlier this morning. Emily turned pale. That's private. Andrew ignored her. It says, quote, if she gives attitude, treat her like a scammer. You know the type. Don't let her play the race card. The room froze. Violet turned away. Layla stopped typing entirely. Emily's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. That's taken out of context. There is no context, Andrew said. This is who you are when you think no one's watching. Josiah looked at Emily, really looked at her, the sharp collar, the practiced smile, the glassy eyes now cracking under the pressure. You sent that message? He asked. I was under stress, she said. This branch is short-staffed. We've had 4 system crashes, and the board's been cutting hours left and right. I'm doing the best I can. By targeting clients based on appearance? Josiah asked. By accepting bribes? Emily didn't answer. Her silence was its own confession. Thomas Bennett stepped forward now, the youngest teller, the quietest. He cleared his throat. "She's telling the truth," he said, pointing at Sophia. "That's a known glitch. We were warned last week. It flags large accounts as high risk when the system overheats. I told Emily. She said it didn't matter." Emily spun on him. "Thomas, you told us to stall her," he said, voice rising. "You told Violet to ask for her ID 3 times just to throw her off. And you told Layla to say the system couldn't find her." Rachel stood now too. "David, we're leaving." "You can," he said calmly. "But not with my name." She blinked. "What?" "Take your check. Take your water. But take your maiden name with you. I'm done covering your arrogance." The air sucked out of the room. A few clients actually gasped. Rachel's mouth hung open. She looked at Emily, who looked at Josiah, who looked at Sophia, still unmoved, still quiet, still holding that phone. A storm of truth now fully unleashed. And in that moment, with the lies unraveling, the cameras rolling, and the whole branch watching in stunned silence, one thing became clear. Sophia didn't come to withdraw money. She came to withdraw the mask from a system that thought power wore a suit and trust had a color. And the reckoning had only just begun. The silence after Thomas spoke wasn't quiet. It was pressure. A heavy stillness that vibrated beneath the skin, like the low hum of a fault line before the ground gives out. Josiah looked from Thomas to Emily, whose entire body had stiffened like a collapsing bridge, straining to hold its shape. She opened her mouth to snap back, but nothing came. She was cornered, not by a weapon, not even by authority, but by something far more dangerous, the truth, spoken plainly by the people around her. Sophia didn't move. She hadn't budged from her spot in front of the counter, her phone still recording, her gaze fixed, not on Emily, but on the space between them, the unspoken gap where decades of bias lived and breathed. Layla leaned forward like she was about to say something, but then stopped herself, swallowed hard, and turned her eyes to the floor. Violet stood with her arms crossed, jaw clenched, but her defiance had cracked at the edges, replaced by a dawning recognition that maybe, just maybe, she'd crossed a line that wouldn't be so easy to explain away this time. Emily glanced toward the front entrance, as if the doors might open and rescue her from the spiral she had started. But they didn't. The doors stayed closed, the clients stayed quiet, and Josiah, for the first time in 10 years of policing, felt like the most dangerous thing he could do wasn't act, it was wait. "Ma'am," he said carefully, turning back to Sophia, "you're not under arrest. I'm not detaining you, but I am asking, for the sake of clarity, are you absolutely certain this branch was notified of your transaction ahead of time?" Sophia didn't blink. "Yes," she said simply. "The call was logged last Thursday, 3:17 p.m. I spoke to a scheduling coordinator named Monica Wells. She confirmed the withdrawal request and said the branch would be informed. I assume that's in the records." Josiah nodded slowly, turning toward Layla. "Can you check that?" Layla's face was now ghost white. "That's not... I don't have access to the call logs. Only managers do." All eyes swung back to Emily, who didn't even attempt to check. "Our system's been buggy all week, even if she called. It might not have saved." But the excuse was hollow, thin, shriveling under the heat of exposure. Andrew shifted his camera slightly, keeping everything framed. "You didn't check. You didn't try to check. And you escalated without confirming facts," he said calmly. "That's on video. And it's live." Emily's voice was fraying now. "You're not allowed to film inside a private bank?" "Correction," Andrew replied. "This is a publicly accessible lobby. No clients have requested privacy. There are no posted signs prohibiting recording, so yes, we can, and yes, we are. The tension snapped, not with a scream, not with a shove, but with a voice from the back of the room. "She's right," an older black woman said, stepping forward. "I've seen how you treat folks in here. My grandson came in last month in scrubs after a night shift and was asked if the debit card he handed you was really his. I was right here, and you laughed when he walked out." Emily spun to respond, but stopped when she realized no one, not even her own team, was stepping in to defend her. Violet shifted uncomfortably. Layla was visibly trembling. And Thomas. Thomas stepped up beside Sophia now, standing just behind her shoulder, not to protect, but to align. Sophia turned her head just slightly and gave him the faintest nod. It said, "I see you." It said, "Thank you." Emily, grasping at control, turned back to Josiah. "Are you going to do something or not? This is disrupting business. She's creating a scene." Josiah shook his head, slowly, deliberately. "No. You created this scene. You escalated it. You failed to verify basic facts. You racially profiled a client. And now, you want me to make it disappear with handcuffs?" His voice dropped just a note lower. "I won't do that. Not today." Rachel, still seated but now noticeably uneasy, tried to interject. "It's not about race. It's about procedure. I mean, you people are always making everything about don't." David cut in sharply. His voice, so rarely raised, echoed with finality. "Just don't." Rachel stopped, and for once, stayed silent. Across the lobby, more phones were lifted. Clients were whispering, exchanging glances, nodding to one another, the kind of silent consensus that meant something bigger was forming. Not just a moment, but a movement. Sophia remained still, but her eyes scanned the room now, calculating, measuring, preparing. She knew what came next. She'd given the bank, the staff, the system, every chance to correct itself, to do the right thing, and it hadn't. It had doubled down. It had exposed itself. And now, it was time. But not yet. She gave the situation 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes to rot, publicly, before she cut the roots. Emily, suddenly desperate, leaned across the counter. "Look, we can resolve this. I'll authorize a call to verify the transaction. If the funds are there, we'll make the withdrawal. It's just a misunderstanding." But even she didn't believe her words. Josiah said nothing. He didn't need to. The shift had already happened. Power had moved, and it wasn't in her hands anymore. Sophia let the pause linger. Then, slowly, calmly, she lowered her phone. "You had a chance to do the right thing 10 minutes ago," she said, her voice even, deliberate. "You chose pride over truth, policy over people. And now, you're going to face the consequences." She turned to Josiah. "You should stay, because what happens next isn't violence. It's accountability." And then she pulled something else from her bag. Not a phone, not a weapon, but a slim black folder. Leather-bound. Professional. The kind only certain people carry. But she didn't open it. Not yet. She let it rest in her hand. A quiet warning of what was about to unfold. Her posture never changed. Her breath was steady. And in that flickering, overheated lobby, the final seconds of ignorance ticked away like a bomb about to detonate. The reckoning was no longer approaching. It had arrived. The lobby was breathless. No one moved. The air was thick, not with fear, but with inevitability. Sophia Carter stood with that slim black folder resting in her left hand, like it weighed nothing and everything at once. Her posture didn't change. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to perform rage or flex authority, because the authority was already hers. in her eyes, her silence, and now, in what she was about to reveal. Josiah watched her closely, a hint of understanding already settling behind his calm expression. Thomas stood steady at her side. Emily, arms still crossed, tried to regain ground with one last gasp of deflection. "Look, whatever this is, it's gone too far. If you have credentials, fine. Let's just call this a misunderstanding and move on." But her voice faltered on the last word. She knew something had changed. Knew, somehow, the balance had shifted and that she was no longer in control. Sophia finally spoke. "No," she said, voice clear and sharp. "You don't get to frame this as a misunderstanding. You don't get to erase the words you said, the choices you made, the way you made me feel in this space." She placed the folder on the counter, gently, deliberately, opened it with quiet precision, and then she slid a card across the surface, a single business card, matte black, gold lettering. It read, "Sophia Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Pinnacle Bank, 35% ownership." Silence cracked like glass. Emily's face collapsed, not in a dramatic, movie-style meltdown, but in a slow, sickening realization that the very person she had profiled, mocked, dismissed, and tried to criminalize, owned her career, owned the branch, owned the bank. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Layla stumbled back a step like gravity had shifted. Violet's arms dropped to her sides. Thomas blinked and let out the breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Rachel Pierce let out a stunned gasp, then immediately turned to David with wide eyes. "You knew?" she hissed. David didn't look at her. "No," he said. "But I wish I had." Josiah took one slow step backward, nodding once in acknowledgement. "Ma'am," he said with a quiet mix of relief and respect. "I'm glad I didn't act too soon." Sophia nodded back. "So am I." And then she turned her attention forward, not just toward Emily, but to the entire staff, the clients, the camera phone still raised. "Effective immediately," she said. "Operations at this branch are suspended for the next 10 minutes. No transactions, no service, no movement unless it's to exit calmly." She turned to Josiah again. "You may remain if you wish. This is no longer a police matter." Josiah nodded. "Understood." Then came the reckoning. "Emily Reynolds," Sophia said, voice unwavering. "You are hereby terminated from your position as branch manager for misconduct, racial bias, and obstruction. Your behavior was not only unethical, it violated internal anti-discrimination policy and put this institution at legal and reputational risk." Emily blinked rapidly. "Please, I have a daughter. She starts college this fall." "I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking clearly enough to accept a $400 tip and weaponize it against a woman you didn't recognize," Sophia replied. "And you were clear enough to joke about arresting me." Emily's knees wobbled, but she didn't fall. She just stood there, absorbing the gravity of what she'd lost, not just a job, but the illusion that her prejudice would never cost her. Sophia turned next. "Layla Walsh and Violet Monroe, your employment is hereby suspended pending retraining and internal review. You both engaged in mocking behavior, upheld discriminatory attitudes, and contributed to an escalating incident. However," she paused, "you will be given an opportunity to redeem yourselves. That's more than I was ever given when I was your age. Don't waste it." Layla covered her mouth with both hands, eyes filling with tears. Violet just stared blankly, numb. Then Sophia's voice shifted, warmer, stronger. "Thomas Bennett," she said. He looked up, startled. "Yes, ma'am." "You stood up. You spoke the truth. You chose integrity over comfort. And I saw it. So did the clients. Effective immediately. You're being promoted to interim branch manager. Full support, full salary, and reporting directly to my office for the next 90 days. If you keep leading with heart, you'll make it permanent." Thomas's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes brimmed. "Thank you," he whispered. "I won't let you down." "I know," Sophia said, and then came the final cut. "Rachel and David Pierce," she said, eyes steady. "Your accounts with Pinnacle Bank are hereby closed. A full refund of your remaining balance will be issued and mailed to the address on file. Your actions, tipping staff for preferential treatment, mocking another client, and contributing to an atmosphere of hostility, are unacceptable. We no longer wish to do business with you." Rachel gasped again. "You can't do that." "I just did," Sophia said. "You're free to find another bank that tolerates your attitude." David didn't say a word. He looked at Sophia, and for the first time that morning, nodded. Not in challenge, but in quiet agreement. Sophia tapped her phone screen, ending the recording. "This footage will be submitted to our PR and legal teams. It will also be archived as training material, not to shame, but to show what accountability looks like." She turned, picked up her folder, and calmly walked toward the door. As she passed the main light switch, she reached up and flipped it. The flickering LED that had stuttered since she arrived stopped blinking. The room filled with clean, steady light. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Sophia looked over her shoulder, back at the staff, the clients, and finally at Josiah. "I'll be in touch," she said. Then she opened the door, stepped into the daylight, and left the branch behind in stunned, silent awe. By the time Sophia Carter arrived at the boardroom 3 hours later, the story had already become national news. The footage Andrew posted had been shared across multiple platforms, stitched with clips from clients, and even quoted in a trending finance newsletter under the headline, "Bank CEO Mistaken for a Thief, Fires Manager on the Spot." It wasn't just viral, it was damning. Pinnacle's name was on fire, and not in the way quarterly reports liked. At the long glass table overlooking downtown Charlotte, the full executive board sat stiffly, some defensive, some quiet, some already drafting apologies in their heads. Robert Hayes, the regional director, stood at the end, arms folded, face unreadable. Sophia took her seat at the head of the table. No theatrics, no anger, just presence. She set the same black folder on the table, opened it, and laid out a single printout, a time-stamped internal message from Emily Reynolds, instructing staff to treat shady clients like scammers and deflect withdrawals that seem off. Below it, a log of unresolved client complaints, all tied to racial profiling, buried months earlier. She didn't need to raise her voice. She let the evidence speak. Robert finally broke the silence. "We failed," he said. "Not just at the branch level, but up here. We didn't follow through on training. We didn't audit logs. And we didn't listen to the red flags." Sophia nodded. "That's why we're not just cleaning house. We're rewriting the policy." She slid forward a printed proposal titled Equal Access Protocol. It outlined mandatory quarterly anti-bias training, anonymous complaint review pipelines, account escalation safeguards with dual verification, and a full audit of past discrimination claims. "This isn't branding," she said. "This is soul surgery. If we want this bank to stand for anything other than what happened this morning, we change from the inside out." One board member cleared his throat. "What about the union?" he asked. Emily was protected. Layla and Violet, too. Sophia looked at him without blinking. "We're not firing them for organizing. We're disciplining them for violating conduct policy. And we'll make that distinction loud and clear." Robert nodded. "Support. Fully." Another member raised a concern about market reaction. The stock had dipped 4% since the video hit. "It'll drop further if we stall," Sophia replied. But if we lead, if we own this moment, it becomes our strength. She turned to Robert. You've got 2 hours to prepare the communication to shareholders. Transparency, accountability, roadmap forward. I want it signed, cleared, and public by tonight. Robert's reply was simple. Yes, ma'am. Then came the harder part, the CFO. Andrew's investigative thread had gone deeper, discovering that over the past year, diversity initiative funds had been quietly diverted into bonuses and branch decor updates. A full $18,700 meant for inclusion programs had vanished into invoices labeled Client Experience Enhancements. Sophia stood slowly. That was Benjamin Carter's signature, she said. No relation. I want him removed by the end of the day. No one argued. The CFO was done. Finally. She turned to the room, her voice low but firm. I've spent years building this bank. I've poured in money, energy, reputation, and still, one lobby, one interaction, and my face was enough to justify suspicion. She let that settle. So if I, as CEO and partial owner, can be treated like a criminal inside my own walls, imagine what we're doing to the people who don't have a title to fight back. Heads lowered. She tapped her folder closed. 10 minutes of exposure did more for accountability than 10 years of internal memos. That's the real problem. And this is the moment we fix it, or we prove we never meant to. No one disagreed. The Equal Access Protocol passed unanimously. Sophia didn't celebrate. She just nodded once. Quiet. Complete. Then she left the boardroom and called Nora. Phase 2, she said. Start with retraining at all Charlotte branches, then Atlanta, then nationwide. And just like that, the reckoning turned into reform. Not a press stunt, not a soundbite, a real shift, written in policy, signed in silence, and driven by a woman who knew exactly how systems broke and how to rebuild them. 6 months later, on a crisp December morning, the lobby of the South Tryon branch looked nothing like it had that day. The flickering light was gone, replaced by soft, warm LEDs that bathed the room in steady calm. The wall that once held the generic corporate artwork now displayed a framed code of conduct titled Client First, Always, signed in bold by Sophia Carter herself. Behind the counter stood Thomas Bennett, no longer interim, but officially installed as branch manager, greeting clients with a quiet confidence, sleeves rolled up, eyes alert but kind. He'd restructured the entire onboarding process, requiring all staff to undergo equal access training before ever touching a teller screen. Violet Monroe had returned after a month-long suspension and retraining program, quieter, humbler, and, by all accounts, transformed. She no longer rolled her eyes when clients asked questions. She listened. She served. She stayed late for workshops without being asked. Layla Walsh, too, came back, not with excuses, but with letters, handwritten apologies to clients she had brushed off, dismissed, or overlooked. She posted one of those letters on the break room wall herself. Bias is a habit. So is change. It read, clients noticed, and they stayed. Some even returned after months of boycotting. Trust, slowly but surely, was rebuilding, not because of PR, but because the people inside the branch had changed their behavior. Not for show, for real. David Pierce, now divorced and walking lighter, had become an informal advisor to Pinnacle's community engagement team. He helped design mentorship programs for at-risk students, connecting banking with life skills, personal budgeting, and professional preparation. He said yes when Sophia called and asked him to speak at a training session for new hires. Tell them the truth, she'd said, about what it feels like when a system makes you invisible. And he had. Josiah Clark, the officer who didn't rush, had since been promoted to a citywide advisory role for de-escalation policy. He now trained other officers on how to recognize coded racism, how to pause before the handcuffs, how to listen before the label. In his sessions, he always told the same story. Sometimes, he said, the person they call a threat is the one saving the whole institution. As for Emily Reynolds, she was gone. Quietly. No lawsuits. No press. Just gone. The last anyone heard. She'd moved to Raleigh and was working part-time in retail. She'd written an email to Sophia, months after the firing, not to plead for her job, but to say she understood now what she hadn't then, that shame could be a beginning, not just an ending. Sophia never replied. She read it once, then archived it. Some lessons were personal. And Sophia? She didn't need the headlines. She already had what mattered. Equal access became the model for 3 other regional banks, thanks in part to a single finance blogger who had followed the story from day one and kept the heat alive. Internal complaint volume dropped, client retention went up, and Sophia's story, the story that began with a smirk, a thief accusation, and a phone call to the police, became required training material across Pinnacle's 240 branches. But she didn't frame it as her triumph. In an internal memo, she wrote, "This is not about power reclaimed. It's about dignity restored. One branch, one moment, one choice at a time." On the anniversary of the incident, Andrew Foster returned to the branch. He stood near the window, same spot he'd filmed from, watching a new client get welcomed in. He turned his camera off. No live stream this time. Just silence. Just a nod. Thomas saw him, walked over, and shook his hand. "Welcome back," he said. "We're different now." And he meant it. And so, the lobby that once held shame now held something better. Truth. Uncomfortable. Unfiltered. And at last, unshakable. Because Sophia didn't just fire a manager. She sparked a movement, and she didn't do it with anger or force. She did it with clarity, with resolve, with heart. If you've ever felt overlooked, or stood up when it mattered most, share your story in the comments. And if you believe in justice with heart, subscribe for more stories that don't just expose the problem, they change it.